Someone leaves you on red. Just that. A gray bubble sitting there, unanswered. Your chest tightens, your stomach drops. You check your phone again like the message might have changed. But here's the strange part. Nothing has actually happened to you. No danger, no injury, just silence. So why does your body react like something just tried to kill it? The real answer is far stranger than you think. Your brain, the same organ running your heartbeat and your breathing right now, cannot fully tell the difference between social rejection and physical danger. Not metaphorically, not as a figure of speech. Neurologically. The circuitry lighting up when you're excluded from a group chat overlaps, almost exactly, with the circuitry that lit up in your ancestors when they were being stalked by something with teeth. That sounds impossible. How could getting ignored feel anything like being hunted? To understand that, you have to go back. Not centuries. Hundreds of thousands of years, to a version of you that didn't have phones, didn't have group chats, didn't even have language in the way you'd recognize it today, just a small group of people moving together across open land, completely dependent on each other to survive the night. Here's what almost nobody tells you about that world. A lone human separated from the group wasn't just lonely. A lone human was, statistically, close to dead. No claws, no sharp teeth, no real speed. Just soft skin and slow legs, standing alone on a landscape full of predators built specifically to exploit exactly that kind of weakness. So exclusion wasn't an emotional inconvenience back then. Exclusion was a death sentence, just one that usually took a few extra days to arrive. Which means your brain had exactly one option. Build a system that reacts to social exclusion with the same urgency as physical danger, not a gentler version, the same version. Because a brain that treated rejection as a minor annoyance instead of a 5-alarm emergency was a brain sitting inside a body about to be left behind, and left behind back then meant food for something else. That's the deep dive. Now here's where the science actually catches this in the act, inside a modern lab, using nothing more than a simple video game. In the early 2000s, a psychologist named Kipling Williams designed a deceptively simple experiment called Cyberball. A person lies inside a brain scanner watching a screen where 3 animated characters toss a ball back and forth. The person believes they're playing with 2 real people online. For a while, they're included. The ball comes to them regularly, then, without warning, it stops. The other 2 players just keep throwing the ball between themselves over and over, completely ignoring the third player who can do nothing but watch. There's no threat here, no danger, not even a real person on the other end. Just a cartoon ball in a cartoon game quietly leaving someone out. A researcher named Naomi Eisenberger, working with colleague Kipling Williams, ran this exact study using functional MRI scanning, watching participants' brains in real time. And what she found should have been impossible if rejection and danger were separate systems. The exact same brain region that activates during physical pain, the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex, lit up during social exclusion almost identically to how it lights up when your body experiences an actual injury. Being ignored in a video game about a bouncing ball activated the same alarm system as touching a hot stove. Let that sit for a second. Not a similar system. Not a related system. Overlapping activation in the part of your brain responsible for registering pain as urgent and demanding immediate attention. Why would evolution build it this way? Wouldn't it make more sense to have 2 separate systems, one for physical threats, one for social ones? Here's the counterintuitive twist. Building 2 separate systems would have been slower, and slower meant deadlier. If your ancestors needed a brand new evolutionary pathway just to process the emotional sting of being excluded from the group, that pathway would have taken millions of years longer to develop from scratch. Evolution rarely builds new alarm systems when an old one can simply be repurposed. So instead, your brain hijacked the exact system already responsible for physical pain, one already fast, primal, and impossible to ignore, and rewired it to fire for social threats too. You didn't inherit a rejection response. You inherited a pain response that learned a second job. And once you know that, other strange human behaviors start making a lot more sense. Think about heartbreak, not the poetic version, the physical version, the actual ache in your chest after a serious breakup, the loss of appetite, the difficulty sleeping. A researcher named John Cacioppo, who spent much of his career studying loneliness at the University of Chicago, found that chronic social isolation doesn't just make people feel sad. It measurably raises inflammation markers in the bloodstream, disrupts sleep architecture, and increases stress hormone levels in ways that closely resemble the body's response to ongoing physical threat. Loneliness, according to Cacioppo's research, doesn't just feel dangerous. Your body treats it as if it actually is dangerous, activating stress systems built for predators, not silence. Your ancestors' bodies weren't being dramatic when isolation triggered a stress response. They were being accurate. Isolation genuinely was a threat to survival. Your body just never got the memo that the world changed. Which brings us to right now. Tonight, your phone sitting on the table beside you. Every notification you obsessively check isn't really about curiosity. It's an ancient survival system, still fully operational, still convinced that staying connected to the group is a matter of life and death. When someone leaves you on red, part of your brain isn't calmly thinking, that's a minor social inconvenience. Part of your brain is running the exact same alarm sequence your ancestors ran when they noticed they'd fallen too far behind the group at dusk, with the light fading and the tree line getting quiet. That's why a single unanswered message can genuinely ruin your afternoon. Not because you're overreacting, because you're running software built for a world where being ignored by your group actually could get you killed, applied to a world where being ignored just means someone's phone was on silent. Social media platforms, whether their designers fully understood this or not, built entire businesses on top of this exact evolutionary wiring. Likes, comments, read receipts. Every one of them either feeds that ancient inclusion signal or triggers that ancient exclusion alarm, hundreds of times a day, far more often than your ancestors ever could have experienced real social feedback in an entire lifetime. Your brain wasn't built to process rejection signals at this frequency. It was built to process maybe a handful of real social ruptures across an entire lifespan, not a dozen tiny ones before lunch. So the exhaustion you feel after a day of scrolling isn't weakness. It's an ancient alarm system, firing far more times a day than it was ever designed to fire, for stakes that no longer exist the way they used to. None of this means the feeling is fake. It means the feeling is real, just aimed at a threat that no longer matches the world you're living in. Your body isn't malfunctioning when rejection hurts. It's running exactly as designed, just designed for a world with fewer notifications and a lot more actual predators. Which brings us back to where we started. Someone leaves you on red. Just that. A gray bubble sitting there, unanswered. But now you know what's actually happening underneath that small, quiet moment. It's not overreaction. It's not weakness. It's hundreds of thousands of years of survival instinct still running in the background, still convinced that being ignored by your group might be the most dangerous thing that could happen to you tonight.